With your permission, Chair, I'd just like to acknowledge my colleagues at the head table. And ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Maybe I should just say ditto to everything that Dr. Martin Hall has said and take my seat, because she's covered who you've got to be and what you've got to do so ably based on many years of experience. My perspective, what I'd like to do is to share with you a perspective on how you go about consulting. And it's just a perspective, because in the business of consulting, there's no one approach that fits every situation. So I want to share with you what we do in the Professional Services Unit at Mona School of Business and Management as just one example of how you might think about going about consulting. And I should tell you that the unit that I head, the PSU, was started 7 years ago with the intention of enabling the school to diversify its revenue streams to reduce its reliance on tuition fees. And so I was brought in from the private sector to start the unit. So a lot of my discussion is about how you start from scratch, one approach that we've used. When I started the PSU, all we had were short courses focused on skills building. And today we have consulting that's there, and I can tell you that whereas consulting is not the biggest part of the PSU by revenues, it is not. It is by far the most profitable. And you know the saying, it's not so much what you earn, but what you keep. So, essentially, the unit I lead offers 3 types of services. There is executive education, which focuses on skills building. There is management consulting, which focuses on solutions. And then we do a bit of seminars. Seminars is very small because we put on seminars to make money. The wider Mona School uses seminars, free seminars, for information purposes. In the PSU, we call training consulting executive education, anything that has to do with skills building. So management consulting for us is about working with organizations on the ground to solve problems. We have found over the 7-year period that there are a number of success factors that we have seen. One, having a focus with your knowledge and your expertise. And the focus that we have has come from our experience and our research. We realize that on the ground in Jamaica, the words academic and theory are often rejected as being of little value. So we make sure that we take time to convert the academic stuff into practical solutions. And I'll share with you momentarily how we do it. We have also found targeting networking to be of value. Once you know what you want to focus on, we have decided that we're not going to attend all the cocktail circuits and out business cards to everybody who passes. But instead, we look for those channels that can promote the kinds of businesses that we are into. And we are very heavy on strategy and operations. That's pretty much the focus that we have. So we target the way we network. When you're starting a consulting firm, you can't talk about brand and reputation because you have none. You're begging for work. And so you have to work the ground, work it, and hope for referrals. Referrals are your best friend. You're only as good as the last job you've done, as Dr. Martin always said. So you're really trying to build to get to that first job and then use that first job as your first referral. So while you're providing the solution, you're also hoping that the client will refer you. Sometimes they don't. Practical solutions. And the word practical is not what you, as a consultant, believe is practical. It's in the eyes of the client. If they're not satisfied, you haven't delivered value. So practical solutions. And to provide practical solutions, as you've heard before, your best weapon is to be able to listen. Listen. Listen, take notes, listen. And then you ask a few questions, but you listen more than you speak. Teamwork and alliances. In Jamaica and certainly in the Caribbean, we have found in the PSU that there's no point trying to hog the job for yourself. We work extensively with associates because we don't have the full-time internal capacity. And we pay everybody. So even when we employ academics and others from the university, we pay them no differently from the outside associate that we use. Communications quality. Listening, speaking, writing, oral, visual, print, in whatever form. You've got to develop your communication skills. And if you feel right now you are weak on communications, I can tell you from our experience, you can always become stronger. Just work at it. So that's how we are organized, and those are some success factors over the past 7 years. We make no apology for bringing academic rigor on the ground to help organizations create value. We do rigorous research, we publish, and we bring it to the clients on the ground. And typically, in our value proposition, what we say is the business climate is always changing. So if the organization remains as is, it will eventually run into trouble because it will fall out of congruence with what's happening around it. The best way to create value is to embrace change and to work with change. So that red question mark you see there in that diagram on your left is about the challenge that the client wishes you to resolve in partnership with them. And the bigger the overlap or the solution, the higher the value tends to be. Now, what we do in the PSU, after listening and taking careful notes, we convert the challenge or challenges, as stated, into research questions. What questions do we need to answer to provide value for the client? So we bring it into research process, which many or all of you would know. Having carefully determined what questions are to be answered, and sometimes from our experience, this could take up a half of the consultancy time. You are going to peruse documents, literature, you're going to talk to people to get a better feel of what's going on. So you can better able to design the study, design the approach. The approach may be purely a qualitative one, may be purely quantitative, or it may be mixed methods. Once we've designed the approach, the next step is to collect and analyze data. And this can be a very frustrating exercise because data in Jamaica and the Caribbean is always available until you try to get it. It disappears totally. So you've got to really be creative in collecting data that's of integrity. Bad data means bad solutions. And the final step in the phase is to show how your findings can solve the challenges stated by the client. Now, I can stand here and say, well, this is how we do it in the PSU on the ground. We have found, as an academic institution, that you've got to deliver it in practice. So let me share with you just 2 examples of how we take academic work out into the real world to deliver value on the ground. And this is my final slide. We have recently done work with Grace Kennedy. Have you heard of that company? Yes. Grace Kennedy is a global food company in Africa, Europe, USA, Canada, throughout the Caribbean. And Grace Kennedy said to us, listen, we don't like our prices and we believe our costs are too high. What can you do to help us? And after several client briefs, we decided together that the research question to be answered from this challenge is, can GK factories, all 5, reduce costs by 10% without affecting productivity and quality? Having determined that that's the question to be answered, after much discussion, we then found the right theoretical approach. So we reached for general systems theory, which goes back all the way to pre-World War II, but still very valid. And we use this theory to identify what variables we need to focus on for each of the GK factories, how we need to focus on those variables, what data we need to collect from each of the factories, how we need to analyze it, and we worked with the GK leadership to collect the data, to analyze the data, to interpret the data, to do what is called factory process optimization. That's optimization across the 5 factories. Because we realized that you could be very productive at one GK factory, but it sub-optimizes everything else. The bottom line is, after 6 months of engagement, we were able to pull 6% out of the cost of production at the GK factories overall. Now you might think that 6% is not enough after all, they're looking for 10. But if you're talking about a $32 billion business, then 6% is not bad. That's on the good side. Recently, on the service side, the Jamaica Cooperative Credit Union League, have you heard of that company? They supervise and regulate all the credit unions island-wide. But because of changing regulations, they found that operating purely as a regulator would no longer work. So they wanted to transform from being a pure regulator to a provider of a broad range of financial services. So they asked the professional services unit again to assist them. So we worked with them on the ground for several months to identify the right research question. What business model should Jakul use to change from being a pure regulator to a provider of financial services? And having agreed the question to be answered, we identified the right theoretical underpinnings. What you see there is a resource-based view, which goes back to the 1950s. But we also use what is called the behavioral theory of the firm, that looks at prices, output, and resource allocation. And using those theoretical underpinnings, we engaged with the Jakul team for 9 months to collect data and to analyze data. And the net result was that the league is now reorganized into divisions. And you may see that they have several divisions now. They now have a group CEO and 4 profit centers. So essentially, they have transformed. And that took about almost 2 years to to complete. So what I'm saying is, don't give up on the academic work that you do at the university. It is valuable. Do not listen to persons who tell you that having gone to university, all you are theorists without any practical foundation. Leverage what you know and become good consultants. Thank you.